recording. I'm sorry.
Okay, I cannot, Marta, I cannot open the Word file. I don't know why.
Okay, I can send it to you again if you want.
No, it's like my laptop doesn't want to open any Word file this morning.
Okay. Which one?
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right,
Okay.
since we have quite an intense schedule ahead of us, what I suggest, Ricardo, is maybe you restart your computer, join again, and in the meantime, we'll do the first introduction, waiting for you to join back. Is that okay with you?
Good morning.
Yes, of course it is. I don't know how much time I need, but I will try to.
No worries, we'll start to.
Okay.
We'll wait for you patiently in the introduction. Don't worry.
Okay, so I hope to be back in some minutes, let's say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ciao.
Ciao. Clemence, if you...
Sure, I will.
If you
All
can
right,
share
so...
the screen. Okay. I will share the screen then.
All right, welcome everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties this morning. I think winter is coming for everyone, including the computers. They're waiting for Christmas break as well as we are. So while we are waiting for Ricardo, I will do the introduction. As you know, and you see, the session is recorded as always. Most of the recordings should be available on the website. If you don't have access to them, if you have difficulties accessing them, please email us and Martin so we can try to help you on this. Now, regarding this session currently, let me get my text together. Sorry, I will be reading, so it won't be as lively as usual, but we'll do our best. So this session now is dedicated to some financial tools, some business models, some tools you can use in order to elevate your project. We thought of it as being quite interesting for you in the sense that it would help upscale the project you have now and maybe try to find some ways of making long lasting after the end of ConnectHeat. In the housekeeping rules, as always, if your connection allows it, please, you can leave your cameras on. Otherwise, indeed, I ask you to stay muted so that all the speakers can be heard quite well. If you have questions, as always, you can raise the hand, you can put them in the chat, and if you can keep them for the Q&A session so that they are more lively, you're very much, we very much appreciate that you would do so. In the next slide, I guess, we have a bit more about the journey we've done so far. As you can see, we are now in the financial tool and business model. It is our fourth session out of 5 online ones. The next one is scheduled on the 21st. It will be dedicated to the non-financial cost and benefits analysis. And we can say that we've had quite a nice journey together so far. I take that opportunity to remind you to fill in the satisfaction surveys. I know we're very annoying with those, but don't think that we don't look at your answers. We do, and we do take them into consideration, and they are necessary actually, of course, for the deliverable, but also for the preparation of the last one that we will have in person. I think Ricardo is back, which is awesome because he will be able to introduce us to the agenda of the day and our speakers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, thanks, Clemence. Sorry about that.
No worries. Is it working now?
Yes, I think my laptop, under the menace of being restarted, he started to behave very well. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for this replacing in the introduction. I don't know if you want to. Yes, exactly. So this is the agenda of today. So we will have basically 4 presentation. I won't go into detail now of the contents of the presentation because I don't want to waste time on that. So I will give immediately the word to the first speaker. Of course, as usual, the trainer sessions are not meant to be, let's say, to be over today. So the topic of the financial tool and business models is always a very important one, I would say a crucial one for the developing of heating communities. So I really encourage all partners, if you find any other tools, reports, experiences, case studies, anything that is related to this topic, please share it with all the consortium, because I think that especially for our topic, which is really a niche topic and it's at its beginning in Europe, it's very important that we all share examples and good practices. Okay, maybe, I don't know, Clemence, if you already said in the introduction, there was an email by Matthias some days ago, and he reminded us all that the participation to the trainers is mandatory for our partners, because it's really the basis, let's say, for developing then our local trainings in a very effective way. So, so it's really part of the work program, of the concept of our project development to take part, to participate in this train the trainer session. So if you miss it for some specific reason, please go again through the recordings and through the presentations. And if you have specific question, you can ask us, Fedarene, and we can also contact the speakers after the training. And by the way, one big thank again to the Fedarene team for organizing all this. Okay, so I think we can start. We are really even a bit in advance. So I would introduce the first speaker, who is Chiara Candelise. Chiara is a senior research fellow at Bocconi University in Milan, in Italy, and also at the Imperial College of London. She's also founder and CEO of EcoMeal, which I think is very interesting, because EcoMeal is a crowdfunding platform, but focusing, as the name says, on eco projects, so especially on energy, but not only. And she's also an expert jury member at the European Innovation Council Accelerator. And some time ago, Chiara also did a specific study, let's say, within a European project called Tempo, on the possibility of crowdfunding for the heating projects, heating and cooling projects, so basically for the district heating industry. And so Chiara will give an overview about this this concept. Chiara, the floor is yours. You can share your screen for your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation and for the introduction.
Chiara, yes. Maybe just one point, but you already know, so you have basically 25 minutes.
Right, okay.
Okay, thank you.
That will be enough, I think. Right, let me share my screen. Do you see my presentation?
It's coming, yes.
Coming, okay. Right, okay, so thank you for the introduction again. As Ricardo said, I'm going to be presenting the result of this study that has been done a few years ago now, but I think it's still very valid, on how to, understanding how and what crowdfunding could do in terms of helping the financing of district heating projects. I will also present some results of the review that I had done back then of the use of crowdfunding in the energy sector, which provides a picture of how was the role of this alternative financing tool in the energy sector. So just a recap on what is crowdfunding. I'm pretty sure you all know what it is, but just to remind ourselves what are the major characteristics. So crowdfunding is an alternative financing tool. Basically, it's which allows to raise funds through web platforms on which project developers publicize their projects and raise funding from that. So what is innovative of crowdfunding is the fact that people can decide where to put their money, can see what the project is. The project needs to describe itself. So the people can choose where to put the money with no intermediation and with full transparency on the project itself. There are different crowdfunding models. We divide them in non-financial models and financial models. The non-financial ones are less relevant for the discussion of today because I'm less used in the energy sector, are the donation-based model, the reward-based model. So basically, people give money to projects, but they don't get in exchange money or some sort of returns, which is in reality instead the case with the financial models, which are grouped into main categories: the equity and the lending crowdfunding. In the equity case, people make an investment, so give money to buy shares of a company. And in the lending case, people give money to lend money to companies, for example. So in both cases, they expect returns out of that investment. In the case of equity, they're related to the returns that they can get out of participating to the equity of a company. In the lending are the interest that comes out of the debt. So this is technically the difference between lending and equity. The financial models are the models that are mainly used in the energy sector, but we'll go back to that in a moment.
You're muted.
Thank you. So always a bit of technical problems here. So I was saying just few figures, just to give you an idea of what is the crowdfunding in the energy sector is a sector that actually exists and it's fairly new. It started in 2012, was the first platform explicitly dedicated to the energy sector, and that was in the UK. What you see here are the figures in terms of project funded and total funding volume from 2012 to 2017. Why 2017? Because the study was done back then and no one had the time to, let's say, to continue that sort of monitoring of funding volume and projects in the crowdfunding energy sector. But here, what you see is a very new sector, but growing over time. And to give you an idea of what is happening to date, I've extracted the data from only one platform, one of the largest in France, called Lendosphere. And as you can see, this is number of projects and funding volume. Sorry, the legend is inverted. So the blue bar is the funding volume, the red line is the number of projects. So as you can see, since they started in 2016, they kept growing up to 500 projects, more than 500 projects financed, and more than 250 million raised in projects, crowdfunding projects in the energy sector. So is a growing sector. These are data from, again, from the review done back then that shows that there are few specific countries in Europe which are more, where the sector is more developed, and is still the case, mainly UK, France has been growing quite a lot also since then, Germany, and the Netherlands. So where is crowdfunding positioned? Is positioned crowdfunding, the application of crowdfunding, the energy sector is positioned in what we all know is happening. So we are going through an energy transition in which we're moving from large fossil fuel generated plants as this to distributed renewable generation as this. So what does mean? It means that in this transformation of the energy sector, we are moving from large investments into more, let's say, smaller, more modular energy projects, closer to the point of consumption. So we all know of this new, it's not new anymore, idea of having a consumer which is also a producer. So we are with the introduction of the prosumer actor in the energy sector. So in this transformation of the energy sector, the liberalization of also of the energy markets, new players have been entering the energy sector, and those are small firms, local authorities, and citizens as well. We all know of now we all speak about energy communities. Crowdfunding, the application of crowdfunding in the energy sector has started in the context of the energy communities that also have been growing in some of them, in particular in some of European countries, even a decade, more than a decade ago. What do we mean by this type of energy communities? We mean projects, energy projects where citizens engage, gather together, engage to develop and invest in energy projects and harvest the benefits of these investments. Okay, in this context, the application of crowdfunding in the energy sector has started. Okay. And in the case, so I don't have, so in this context, we have prosumers, which are consumers, which can become also producers and can also become investors. Okay, so that's the concept that is behind the application of crowdfunding to the energy sectors again. So in the context of the concept of having citizens participating to the development and investment also of energy projects is not new for the district heating sector. Back then, I had done an analysis of, back then when I did the study for the Tempo project, I had done an analysis of, for example, the Danish district heating sector. And in 2018, 340 district heating systems in Denmark were operated by cooperatives of cooperatives of citizens, participated by citizens. So this concept of having of bringing citizens, having citizens as actors in the development and also in the investment of district heating project is not new in the context of Europe. Crowdfunding is application of crowdfunding. Still now, I'm not aware of crowdfunded district heating projects, but still in the next slides, the idea is to discuss with you what would be the benefits of potential benefits of using these instruments for the development of district heating projects. Just a couple of slides on crowdfunding in the energy sector in general. So this again are data that comes from the review done back in 2017. The main message I wanted to send is, first of all, that crowdfunding in energy is used only for projects in green energy. So there is let's say, an element of, well, only on projects on green energy. And in terms of technology, back then, the most of the projects were on PV and wind, so the more mature technologies. But what you can see here and also here in these slides, you see a progressive differentiation of projects. So, for example, in United Kingdom, which was back then most developed sector, crowdfunding in the energy sector, you can see that in the later year there are more technologies, more projects on different technologies, not just on wind. And the beginning was mainly wind and PV, more mature technologies, but they had also projects in geothermal, ocean energy, and bioenergy, energy efficiency, and so on. So there is a trend of differentiation in other technologies, which could potentially give space also for district heating as a different technology. Again, this is shows that this is the number of projects and average size of the project. So what you can see here is the prevalence of medium, small size PV projects and a couple of single large scale more projects on, for example, less mature technologies like geothermal and ocean energy. These two in particular are two very large projects financed through crowdfunding platform in the UK. So you can see the crowdfunding has been able to raise quite a bit of money. Well, here we're talking about 5 million per project on very on less mature, let's say, technology. So I think it's a quite interesting result. So why using crowdfunding in the energy sector? And this we're moving more into then why using it in the district heating sector. So in general, crowdfunding is two main elements. The first one is capital. So we're talking about a financing tool. So it's an alternative way to get to access finance for project developers. In some cases, again, these data are a bit old, but in a review that has been done in 2018, there was a survey among crowdfunders, so developers that have been using crowdfunding. One of the results was the feedback was that in some cases can also be cheaper or at least faster access to capital compared to the more traditional finance. But the other main element which makes crowdfunding fairly innovative compared to other financing tools is the fact that it can be used to engage, okay? To engage, first of all, a wider audience of potential investors, but also communities and the territory, the context in which the project is developed. The fact that the project has to present itself on the platform, the fact that the platforms are strictly connected to social and digital communication, and the fact that they need to communicate themselves in order to get the attention of potential investors is a way to increase the visibility of that project, to communicate the project, to let people know what are the details of the project. The fact that crowdfunding in the energy sector is used mainly in the form of financial instrument is because it is used as a way to give back to the territories some revenues coming out of the investment. So it's used as a sort of compensation for the territory interested by people living in the territory interested by the project itself. So it can be used as a way to increase the local consent versus the project and to reduce potential NIMBYism. In some cases, can be used as a way to reduce the planning risk, because if you increase the local involvement, increase the local consent, you might have easier access or easier relationship, at least with the local authorities or with the authorities which need to give you the planning consent for your project. So this from the point of view of the developers, but let's have a look at the motivation to invest. So why crowdfunding is interesting, or could be interesting for people to participate to, so people to invest. So first of all, as mentioned before, in the financial forms, crowdfunding is a way to access investment. So this highlights the other, in my view, the other main disruptive, let's say, innovation of crowdfunding in this context is the fact that people can invest in energy projects even with small amount of money. Okay, so in some project you could participate even with few hundred euros, and this is access to investment. So people that don't have many many capitals can still invest and participate in this type of investments through the crowdfunding platforms and get returns out of that. So what you see here is, again, from the review done in 2017, a range of returns offered by the projects crowdfunded on the European crowdfunding platforms that have been surveyed back then. So as you can see, there is a quite wide range of returns offered depending on the type of instruments. Equity tend to offer higher returns compared to lending because it's higher risk and more. Let's not go too much in the details of that, but the message that I want to send here is that one of the main motivations to invest is, of course, return on investment. So it's a way, crowdfunding the energy sector is a way to give the opportunity to, for example, citizens living in the territory interested by the projects to earn out of that project. Other motivations, and that's again what makes the use of crowdfunding in the energy sector interesting and complex, and it's something that is not just without it's not just an access to capital and financing tool, but also a communication tool. So a survey that has been done on the perception of EU citizens that have been participating on crowdfunding in energy projects, so investing in those projects, have been asked what were the main motivations to participate. And as you can see, the first ranked motivation is transparency. So it's the idea of being able to decide where to invest their money. So and therefore to be able to invest in full transparency and in full awareness of where the money goes. The second motivation, as you can see, is expected rate of return, which is something that we just mentioned. And the third is the sustainability impact. So as mentioned before, crowdfunding in energy growth as a tool, financing tool in the context of the energy transition, in the context of also initially was a very grassroots movement, growing in the context of also civic movements and energy citizenship movement toward a transition toward the more clean energy systems. So a couple of concluding slides. I hope I'm still, I think I'm in time. I'm within time. So these two final slides are summarize the main conclusions they came out from the study mentioned before, which is also referenced down there in the slide, that we did in trying to understand or analyze how funding could be of help for district heating and for the access to finance also for district heating. So as mentioned before, the main two characteristics of crowdfunding, as I said, is access to finance and the engagement element. So let's look at them in separate in 2 moments. So when we consider crowdfunding as a tool to access finance for district heating projects, we in terms of accessing finance for district heating, on the left you see the challenges that in the discussion also with experts back then we had identified for the district heating. So first of all, access to finance in particular for the smaller district heating as mentioned as a challenge in some cases. So this is very simply crowdfunding, as mentioned before, is an additional financing tool which could provide access to finance, in particular for small to medium projects, for projects that maybe are more, let's say, less skilled or less able to access to more structural and traditional finance. The equity can be used in the two models, in the two financial models. In the equity model, in particular, can allow to raise equity. And possibly in that case making easier the access to debt, to bank loans. In the case of cooperatives, the equity model could help in expanding the number of members participating to the cooperative and expanding the number of financing members participating to the cooperative that would have would own the plant and would own the energy project. In the lending model, would provide some additional source of debt, for example, in parallel to bank loans, or potentially substituting completely bank loan in case of very small projects. Another problem in terms of accessing finance for district heating projects that has been identified is that often district heating project provides fairly low or medium internal rate of return, or longer return on investment than what the private capital would expect. Okay, so that is particularly the case for projects which have wider social and which would provide wider social and environmental benefits, or they're more relevant to the territory. And it's exactly for those projects that potentially crowdfunding could help in gathering capital or raising capital from people that are more willing to invest with what is called patient capital. So a capital that it would expect not immediate or very high returns, because expect these returns to be combined with other benefits, other social, environmental benefits for the territories. And the crowdfunding tool could potentially help in gathering investment from those people. And who are potentially those people that are living in the territory, people that through the crowdfunding project could get to know the project, understand the potential benefits for their territory of that project, and therefore willing to make them willing to invest in the project with some returns, but not necessarily high as the private capital, which comes from not from the territory, would expect to get. So let's move to the other, let's say, area or element that characterize crowdfunding, which is public engagement. Again, what you see on the left are the challenges that, again, speaking with experts of district heating implementation, back then we had identified. And on the right, you see how crowdfunding could, a discussion of how crowdfunding could help in those challenges. So let's start from the first one. It has been identified as one of the challenges in district heating development in general, engagement of what are then the final consumers, and the lack of awareness and the potential and the negative perceptions of what the district heating project could bring has been identified as one of the challenges in moving forward in developing district heating projects. And so in that respect, crowdfunding, as mentioned before, is a communication tool, not just a tool to raise capital, and in that sense could help in letting people know about the benefits of the projects, the characteristics of the projects, and also the benefits and opportunities in terms of economic and social environmental benefits for the territory and for the potential consumer participating to that. And
you only have 1 minute left. Sorry.
Okay, I'll be very. It's the last slide. I'll be very quick in finishing. So, second point, which is related to that, one element, one risk that makes investments in district heating projects more difficult and more risky is the demand risk. And what is that? Is the fact that ex ante, you know that you have to make an investment, and the return on your investment and the profitability of your investment will depend on the amount of people the customers which will actually connect to your district heating network. Okay, so sometimes not knowing in advance, so there is a risk on not having the demand that you need afterwards, after you've made your investment, not having the demand you need to make the investment profitable. So engagement of citizens/consumers while you are developing the project and having the commitment of future consumers on being consumers afterwards, while you're developing the project, is something that could reduce this demand risk. And crowdfunding potentially, thanks to the ability of communicate and engage people through the investment, could potentially help in that direction. The point 5, the next point, the next challenge is related to what I just said. So there are economy of scale in district heating in project investments. The more people are connected, the more you reduce the overall costs, or you spread the overall initial investment costs. And crowdfunding campaigns potentially could help in increasing the public awareness, the acceptance, and therefore the number of connections, of customer connections. NIMBYism is a challenge for district heating project, has been mentioned as a challenge. And as mentioned before, crowdfunding could help in reducing NIMBYism through what? Through allowing redistribution of the economic returns of the investment on people interested by the project, and helping the local community to know the projects and to be aware and to know the potential positive impacts, and not just the potential negative perceptions of the project itself. And finally, the planning risk. In the case of district heating, planning risk is a risk which make investments in district heating potentially more risky, and therefore any tool, and crowdfunding is one of those, that could help the engagement and discussion with the local territories and the local authorities and the planners, could help in reducing that risk. And with that, I I finished my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions. And here you see my details for future reference. If you want to get in touch and discuss this topic, I'm more than interested in continuing the discussion.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chiara. As usual, a lot of interesting insights, I think, and suggestions. And also thanks for being very transparent on the on what could be the obstacles, of course, the barriers for implementing such an innovative system, especially for district heating. So is there any questions from you about the crowdfunding? We discussed this topic several times for our pilot cases, but I think now you have the opportunity to ask more, let's say, practical questions to Chiara, because when it comes to the real implementation, of course, yeah, the devil is there, let's say. So is there any question? I don't see it in the chat. I have maybe, Chiara, one, I don't know exactly if it's a question or you already talk a bit about that, but I think it would be interesting to elaborate a bit. So I think two of the key obstacles is that, of course, the crowdfunding campaign needs organization, let's say, and it's a bit of time. And sometimes projects are running on, how could I say, parallel tracks. So maybe they should also access some other fundings which have a different time plan, for example. So I was wondering, how do you see this? And for example, if you can give us some example of what could be the duration of a crowdfunding campaign. Maybe we are aware of that for, I don't know, board games or something like that. Maybe we are not aware of what could be the duration for an energy project. And the other point you were mentioning, also the fact that the platform is not just a way to collect money, so to exchange money for collecting this equity part, but also for stimulating the engagement. And I think this is a very important point, because the other barrier is for the project developer how to create this engagement. So if you can say something about these 2 points, duration and engagement.
Yeah, I think you raised a very good point in timing. Timing is very relevant. Timing on one hand, and complexity of financing on the other hand, it could also be a challenge. And now that you asked this question, I'm thinking that, well, the study we've done was a while ago. And I think probably what can be done now is going more in the details of, particularly these details in the case of district heating projects. And I'll explain a bit better what I mean. In general, a campaign, crowdfunding campaign, let's say, you could consider if the project is ready, okay, is ready. By ready, I mean there is a business plan done, all the documents are there. Then you should assume, let's say, 2 months, 2-3 months. It depends also on the country where you are and the legal aspects that you have to deal with. But let's suppose you have a couple of months of preparation of the campaign. Then you launch the campaign, and the campaign, let's say, should last, let's say, a couple of months. So this is the most efficient type of timing of a crowdfunding campaign. So let's suppose then you need 5 to 6 months from the beginning, when you start working on the campaign to when you get the money. Okay. Okay, so 5-6 months. Then let's suppose, so if it's a campaign that it's necessary to raise the amount of money, all the amount of money that you need for the project, then okay, then you say, okay, I do the campaign and then I have the money to start my project. But if crowdfunding is one part of a more complex financing project financing, okay, then the timing is might be a bit more complicated. For example, let's suppose crowdfunding, it's equity and you need the equity. Well, could be easy if you start with the equity. You say, okay, I want I need, let's say, 200,000 euros of equity, because then I need 1 million debt from the bank. Okay, so the bank tells you, okay, I'll give you 1 million, but show me that you have you have the equity. Okay, and that's fair enough. But then when you do the campaign, you present a business model, a business plan, sorry, which assumes that you have the debt, okay, because you need that debt in order to be able to do that project. And then that's something that it's in terms of timing can be, or managing this process can be a bit complex. In some cases, you might get the bank to tell you, to give you a document that says, okay, I give you the money, but you have to, it's conditioned to the fact that you raise this amount of money through the crowdfunding. It's something that, for example, in Italy, we are starting to develop with some banks, but still we're talking about a fairly, let's say, innovative and complex implementation of the tool. So what I'm saying here is the question is very appropriate, and crowdfunding, this is the answer to the first question. So crowdfunding is easier when, I would say, when the amount of money that you need for the project is exactly the amount of money that you raise on the platform. Okay, and that makes it easier. Once your project needs, in order to be able to start, needs also funding from other sources, is doable, but it's slightly more complicated. Okay, and that's something that we could potentially look more into details in the case of DC heating. I would be happy to consider looking into that. To answer the other question on the engagement, timing again is important. I'll make another example, which is close. For example, in the case of energy communities, which is very similar to, in reality, to DC heating, which basically are energy communities in the heating sector, as we often say, being able to do a crowdfunding campaign earlier, in the moment in which you are, yes, raising capital, but you also need to raise. Earlier allows you to raise capital on one hand, and on the other hand to publicize your project, and therefore engage earlier on with final potential customers. Sorry, I'm replying in a bit more complicated manner. So, but this is exactly one of the points of the last slide. So you could use crowdfunding as a communication tool while raising capital in an early stage of your project development, okay, to increase engagement and to increase the potential number of final customers you will have afterwards. Yeah, so I hope I replied a bit more clearly.
That makes sense. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And once again, the project is well on his track. The timing is not very long, let's say, so it's perfectly reasonable, I think. Okay. Okay, is there any other question? Maybe we can allow one more question before moving to the next speaker. Okay, if not, thanks again, Chiara, for your, and of course thanks also for leaving your contact details, so just in case you need some more hints, and you have additional questions afterwards about crowdfunding, maybe you can directly write Chiara or, of course, through us. Okay, we now move to our next speaker, Mariangela Luceri. Mariangela is a project manager at Fedarene. Today she will talk about the UCF, so the European City Facility, which is a European initiative financing investment concept, basically, and how this can accelerate investment in sustainable energy projects. So, Mariangela, the floor is yours, and you also have 25 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I actually think I will be way shorter. So can you see my slide?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm here talking, as Ricardo mentioned, about the European City Facility, or UCF. This is an initiative launched in 2019 by Erasmus and Cinea, and previously financed by the Horizon 2020 program, and now financed by the LIFE program. Quickly, what UCF wants to do is to support municipalities, especially small and medium-sized municipalities, in accessing financing, particularly private financing, for their sustainable energy projects. And we tackle some barriers that usually are faced by civil servants and by municipalities, such as, for example, the culture of using private financing or new forms of financing, as Chiara mentioned earlier, as crowdfunding, and in particular, the culture of engaging with financing institutions. Sometimes we see that there is a lack of synergy between the planning and implementation of actions. And in particular, for big projects, sometimes municipalities lack the competences to combine different funding sources. And so what the UCF is trying to do is to create a link between the planning and investment and support municipalities in accessing private and public financing, both at national and European level. And we provide both financial and technical support. In particular, and that help municipalities in structuring their project. In particular, so this investment concept is a document. We already have a template in both English and all the European Union languages, Icelandic and Ukrainian, and you can find it on our website. And this document basically helps municipality in constructing and dividing their actions of their action plan into sound investment packages, and including and highlighting all the information and data that investors look at, so that first of all, your project seems attractive for investors, but also they can quickly see whether your project is, for example, bankable and interesting for them. As I mentioned, we provide both financial and technical support. In terms of financial support, we give 60,000 euro to each beneficiary. This is a lump sum, which means that the municipality or the beneficiary is free to use it as they see fit. For example, if they lack human resources to carry out the project, this lump sum can be used to hire someone like an energy agency or associations, a consultant, whoever they find relevant for carrying out the project. This 60,000 euro can be used for all the groundwork that you may need, for example, legal analysis, market analysis, feasibility studies, energy audits, whatever activity that you may need, for example, to then develop a district heating system. There is a simplified reporting system, meaning that we only request for the submission of an investment concept, but we do not request, for example, for detailed reporting such as invoices, timesheets, and so on. And also, bearing in mind that this is public money coming from the European Commission, therefore double financing is not allowed. The fact that this is a lump sum, it also allow you to combine it with other projects or financial sources that you may have. If, for example, you already have an idea and you already have carried out some groundwork to develop this idea, and they just need additional money for feasibility studies again, or for any other activities, UCF can be combined. In terms of technical assistance, we have a national support system that I will mention earlier. So the applicant or beneficiary is guided throughout all the process, but we also provide capacity buildings for civil servants in 2 steps. One is during the development of the investment concept, and one is after the investment concept has been developed, and so the municipality actually needs to use it to access further financing. For what concerns the first phase, so the development of the investment concept, we will provide some capacity building activities such as e-learnings, webinars, and so on. And this will serve to support the municipality in not only developing an investment concept, but also understanding it and being able to present it to investors. Because what we noticed is that most of the time, especially for small municipalities, the investment concept is drafted by a consultant, but then when the investment concept is submitted, the consultant leaves and the municipality is left with a very technical document they cannot understand, and particularly that they cannot use because they cannot present it to a bank or a financing scheme. And so what we want to do is to train them, not to become financial experts, that would be impossible, of course, but to help them in reading the investment concept, understanding it, and presenting to the investors. So far, we launched 5 calls for applications. For several reasons here, we could not include also the result of the 5th call. But in any case, here you can see what were the main sectors targeted by our beneficiaries. Just a quick information here, at the beginning in the first call, UCF was generally open for sustainable energy projects. And so we could have, for example, projects focusing mainly on renewable energy sources. Then we added some more linkages to energy efficiency that I will also mention later. And you can see that the sectors slightly change for what concern, for example, ConnectHeat. District heating, as you can see, is one of the main targeted sectors in the 3rd, 4th, and also the 5th call. And we financed so far almost 300 beneficiaries. On our website, you can see the list, and you can also access a summary report that describes briefly who they are and what they used UCF for and what they plan to carry out as project. This is just to give an idea of what UCF can finance. And here I would like just to present this case from Tabor in Czech Republic. Tabor is a beneficiary of our 3rd call for application. And they submitted an application targeting mainly district heating with an expected investment size in the application of 40 million euro and an expected energy savings of 46 gigawatt hour per year. Tabor used our money, our 60,000 euro lump sum, for an analysis of the legal framework, a design of a functional model for community energy, and for market analysis. And then what they plan to do is to use the investment concept to finance the production of solar energy in rooftops, in improving the lighting in schools, and in improving the thermal insulations of public and residential buildings, in creating a district heating routes, and also in using wood chips and natural gas for heating. UCF is managed through call for applications. As I mentioned, we already launched 5 calls, and now we are working on the 6th call that will be launched in January. The call is launched simultaneously in all the European Union, Iceland, and Ukraine. But then countries are grouped into 3 regions, so Nordic and Western countries, Central and Eastern Europe countries, and Southern Europe countries. This is done mainly because we want municipalities to compete with other municipalities that face similar challenges, similar buyers, and that start from a similar context, for example, in terms of technology available and laws and so on. The sixth call will open on the 15th of January 2024 and will close on the 15th of March 2024. And we have a budget of 4.5 million euro for the sixth call. So we will finance 75 beneficiaries. In particular, 30 beneficiaries will be selected in Central and Eastern Europe, 19 in Northern Western Europe, and 26 in Southern Europe. When an applicant approaches UCF, hopefully they will carry out 5 steps that you see here. First of all, there is a pre-application phase. So basically where we are right now, where the consortium presents UCF. We also have a national support system that will carry out national info session in national languages and that can answer UCF-related questions in national language. And then when the call is open, you can submit an application, and this is done in 2 steps. One is called eligibility check, and one is called full application. I'll come back at in the next slide. Then if you're successful, of course, you move to the next step. If you're not successful, instead, you're redirected to our support. So either the central help desk managed by the consortium or the national help desks. Relevant here is that every applicant that submits an application receives a feedback report. And this is particularly important for non-selected applicants because, first of all, it highlights what were the shortcomings of the application, but also gives suggestions for improvement so that you can then be successful in next calls. If you are selected instead, you pass to the grant agreement phase. Sorry. And once the agreement is signed, you receive the first payment, which is the 65% of the overall grant. The grant agreement is also quite standard procedure, so we already have the model uploaded on our website, so you can check what we will ask you to sign before submitting an application. And then here you're also supported by our country experts, so our national support in negotiating the agreement. So if you're not confident, for example, in English, the country expert will facilitate the negotiation with our team. Once the grant agreement is signed, you have 1 year to develop an investment concept. So 1 year to develop all the activities that you ask funds for, and also 1 year to participate in our learning program. And again, here you will receive guidance from our country expert. Once the investment concept is submitted, it is validated by our consortium, and then you receive the remaining 35% of the grant. And here you will start a 2 years monitoring period. It seems long. In reality, it's very light monitoring, meaning we only ask you to fill in a survey once a year. And if you are interested to participate in our roadshows with investors, matchmaking activities, and also to receive further support from our site in accessing financing. This is the eligibility check. It's done online, and it's a very quick process. It's 5 questions with yes or no answer, and it is meant to understand whether you are eligible or not. So UCF is open to municipalities or local authorities, grouping of municipalities or local authorities, and local public entities aggregating municipalities, local authorities. They must be based, of course, in European Union member states, in Iceland or Ukraine. And very important here, they must have either a CCAP, so an action plan developed within the framework of the Covenant of Mayors, or they have to have another local climate plan with local mitigation targets. This is very important because if you have a local action plan that is not developed within the framework of the Covenant of Mayors, so that it does not follow the European standard, let's say, the fact that your plan is simply committing to support Fit for 55 or national targets is not enough. You need to indicate local mitigation targets. And this can be, for example, reduction of CO2 emissions, energy savings, renewable energy, whatever mitigation targets that you have for your local authority is fine, but there must be at least one, and this must be indicated in the application form. Then you have to provide a proof of political commitment, meaning the mayor needs to sign a letter of support to the project, and you have to commit to the monitoring period, so the 2 years that I mentioned earlier. Once you pass the eligibility check, you can enter the full application. Again, this is done online through our platform. On the website, you can find a PDF of the application form so that you know more or less what are the sections, and you can start filling it in offline if you prefer. It's formed of 4 sections. Identification of the applicants. This is quite standard. You are requested to have the main contact person, the name of your municipality, the name of your project. Particularly, you have to indicate the LAU code of your municipality, and if you participate in a group, all the LAU codes of the municipalities in your group. Political commitment here is where you upload the letter of support from the mayor and the local action plan. And here it's also where you indicate what are your local targets, mitigation targets. And then you need to describe what kind of project you want to develop, and so what kind of investment you will do. For example, looking at the Tabor that I mentioned earlier, here they wrote the part on installation of PV panels on rooftops, district heating, and so on. All these activities that then you will finance with the use of the investment concept. Very important here is that you also have to decide what is the main sector of your project and highlight whether you also have other sectors. And per each sector identified, you need to set what are the estimated impacts in terms of investment and in terms of, for example, energy savings, renewable energy, and so on. And then the 4th section is use of UCF support. So you will tell us how you will manage the project, so the governance structures at the basis, how you will involve relevant stakeholders, and how you will use the 60,000. Again, if we look at Tabor, here it's where they described, for example, the activities that they want to finance, so legal analysis, market analysis, and the other activities. Few tips. Again, the mitigation targets is really important. Once you had the investment size and expected impacts per each sectors, these are automatically combined to give an estimation of your total investment size and your total impacts. Although UCF finance every type of sustainable energy projects, there is a focus on energy efficiency, meaning that projects focusing on energy efficiency receive extra points in the evaluation. Governance structures and stakeholder engagement are really important because there is a threshold applied to these 2 fields. And then if you submit an application, please be coherent with the figures you provide in the expected impacts, because if they are unrealistic, then your evaluation will be negatively evaluated. These are the evaluation criteria. There are 4 for a total of 20 points. So you have the ambition of the proposed investment project. As I mentioned, UCF is mainly targeting small municipalities. So what we do is that we rank the applications received per region, counting the total investment size and total impact that they receive compared to the other municipalities in that region. But then we also assess this investment size and impacts per capita, because we want to favor small municipalities. So we want to favor applications from local authorities with small population size. And then, as I said, you receive extra point if your project focuses on energy efficiency. Then you have governance structures, stakeholder engagement, as I mentioned. And then, very important, coherence and plausibility. So here again, please be realistic with the numbers you provide. And also, we understand that sometimes small municipalities do not have the capacities to fill in this kind of application, and they are supported by consultants, energy agencies, and so on. But please be sure that the application that these organizations are submitting on your behalf, it's uniquely tailored to your needs. Because what we saw is, for example, in some cases when the application was drafted by consultants, they just use the same template over and over and again, and then all these applications are just a copy paste and they are just rejected. There is no threshold in the ambition. So whatever ambition you have, you're just simply ranked in your region, but then you do have a threshold for the governance, stakeholder engagement, and the coherence and plausibility, and it's a threshold of the 50% of the total score per each criterion. As I said, we do have a support system. At European level, you find us. We also manage a central help desk. And then at national level, we do have in each country 2 organizations or 2 persons, meaning 2 roles. One is the country expert. It's basically the national contact point of UCF in each country, and they are the one that guide the applicant throughout all the process, so throughout all the 5 steps that I mentioned earlier. And national hubs instead are organizations that, first of all, promote the UCF in your country, but then they come into the 5th step, so they will be the one supporting us in creating matchmaking with the national investors, identify national investor that could be feasible for your project. Each country expert has an UCF email. It's very easy. It's ec.country@uctfacility.eu. And on our website, you can also find who they are. And we also carry out a set of national activities. As I mentioned, country expert, the guide throughout the process, so they can advise you, for example, on your application form. Please notice that they cannot draft the application form on your behalf. They can check the quality of your application before your submission. They can support you to understand whether you're eligible or not. And in some countries, they also organize tailored trainings, for example, for a particularly challenging part of the applications, like calculation of expected impacts, for example. We also have national info sessions. Mainly they will be organized between December and January for the 6th call. I have a voice. And then they will simply facilitate the relationship between us and the beneficiaries. So they will act as intermediaries. And this is it from my side. So if you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mariangela. Of course, I can just, I'm a direct witness of that. For example, we submitted an application and we run a project with the UCF tool and on behalf, of course, of a group of municipalities. And I completely agree that even though the list of the documents and of the steps for submitting an application seems long, then in the end it's very easy and straightforward. So it's really a good way to get this money to run the investment plan. Is there any question about this opportunity, this program? I have maybe a question. It's more a curiosity because, as I said, I know the tool, the instrument very well, but I was wondering. First, you were showing a breakdown of the topics, of the key topics for the different calls, and of course, for example, you also highlighted the district heating specific part. I was wondering, even though I can guess there is no official, let's say, statistic about that, but how is the situation about, for example, energy communities? Are you receiving a lot of application? Is it becoming really a hot topic there, and therefore we can expect a lot of competition, for example, if we want to use this tool? And maybe the same question is about the connecting to the presentation by Chiara about crowdfunding, if you see also proposals about these innovative financing tools.
So I do not have the details of each sector, unfortunately. On the website, you can find our summary reports per each call, where you can find all the sectors targeted. Energy communities is I think it's not a sector per se in our case, because, for example, as in the example of Tabor, they were developing an energy community, but then the main sector was district heating. So usually it's included as activities. So activities, for example, to engage stakeholders for development and energy community, or a municipality that already have an energy community and wants to submit projects with them. But yes, it is usually matched with then the actual activity that will develop. So if it's, for example, for renewable energy and so on, then the main sector is going to be something else. And in terms of crowdfunding, so we do not have data on, well, we do have data, but they're not yet very conclusive because, as I mentioned, we started only in 2019, but the first call was only launched in 2020. So we just started collecting information from the monitoring period, which is where we see what kind of financing schemes are then used by our beneficiaries. Crowdfunding is, of course, one of the financing opportunities that we support. What we saw is also linked to the main sectors that I presented earlier, as most of the applications focus on buildings. Of course, accessing public funds like national funds or European funds like PDAs and so on is the easiest way for municipalities to go on with their project. What we're trying to do, especially in this second phase of ECF finance under the LIFE program, is to support municipalities in accessing private financing. That's why we're putting a lot of stress on the financial part. So all the, we will develop learning programs on how to find financing opportunities, including crowdfunding, and how to access these funds.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, is there any other question? I don't see in the chat. So if it's okay for you, now we can have a small break, a little bit in advance. So I suggest that we take a 15 minutes break and we start again a little bit in advance with respect to the schedule, which means 5 minutes before. So at 10:35. So my suggestion is not to disconnect so that we avoid potential technical problems. You could just switch off, your webcam and your microphone and stay connected. And at 10:35 sharp, we try to start again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. So let's start again. Okay, we still have two slots for this Train the Trainer session. And next presentation will be done by Miguel Ángel García Fuentes from Cardiff. He's the coordinator of the Remo Urban project. And he will also speak about Prospect Plus, which is another project where he took part as an external mentor. And he will also talk about innovative financing schemes and especially about their application to sustainable energy projects. So, Miguel Ángel, the floor is yours. If you can share your presentation.
Sure. Okay. Hi. Hello. Good morning. Hope you can hear me. Is it okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay. So yes. Can you see the screen? Okay, perfect. Please. So, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for your kind invitation to be part of this webinar in order to share a practical example in which we have implemented actions related to implementation of district heating systems and how to finance them. Well, first, I apologize because I am a bit sick, so I hope that my voice keep until the end of the of the presentation, and I hope I can make it. And my name is Miguel García. I work for Cardiff, which is a research institution that is based in Valladolid, in Spain, and where we are working in different fields, among them, well, the field of smart cities and sustainable cities, where we have been working on different projects related to the implementation of actions related to transforming the urban ecosystem, especially in the fields of energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, information and communication technologies, nature-based solutions, and so on. And the example that I bring today, well, actually a couple of examples were implemented in the framework of the Remo Urban project. That was a project funded by the European Commission that I was coordinating between 2015 and 2020 when the project ended, and where we implemented several actions related to the transformation of cities. And also, well, I'm participating in the project Prospect Plus, which is a project that is coordinated by Eurocities and that aims at well, supporting and capaciting cities on different sorts of skills and activities. And they have different modules, among them some modules related to financing energy efficient retrofitting projects in buildings, both public and private, and also other kind of actions, as for example, lighting systems, sustainable mobility, and so on. And I have been participating in the project as an external expert, mentoring some cities through also the examples that I'm bringing today, well, showing these cities, how these examples were implemented and how they can be somehow replicated in other environments, considering the local conditions. This project, I will send you later the information, but this project works through a set of different calls, both for mentors and for mentees, in order to well connect experts with those needing support in order to get new capacities and new skills in order to implement sustainable projects. And now they are launching a new call for both mentors and mentees, which is well quite interesting in order to learn from different experiences and also to exchange knowledge on successful projects that have been implemented. So I will send you later the information in case you are interested in participating in this call, either as mentors or as mentees, in order to participate in these knowledge exchange programs. Regarding Remo Urban, well, the project was it started in 2015 and it was funded in the first call of Smart Cities and Communities projects by the European Commission under Horizon 2020. And the main objective of the project was to develop and validate an urban regeneration model, always thought from the concept of replicability, so designed as highly replicable to be implemented in other cities, understanding replicability as the capacity to be adapted to different local conditions and different local ecosystems. And in order to transform these cities in these three pillars that are well defined there, working on buildings, existing buildings and districts towards low energy districts, working also on actions related to city transportation towards sustainable urban mobility, and also integrating the existing city infrastructures through the implementation of information and communication technologies. Here you see some pictures of the actions that we implemented in the fields of energy in buildings and also in the fields of sustainable mobility, where we deployed a quite interesting range of different actions with different approaches in terms of how to finance them, how to engage the citizens, and how to implement participation processes, co-design processes for the interventions, and so on, in the three cities in which we were working. That were the cities of Valladolid here in Spain, the city of Nottingham in United Kingdom, and the city of Tepebasi, which is in the metropolitan area of Eskişehir, which is in Turkey. And the way in which we developed this model was a three-dimensional model in order to connect three dimensions of the city transformation that are basically the different phases that have to be implemented, so the temporal goals and how to address them, the different priority areas that in our case were those three, but we acknowledge that we're transforming the city towards its the decarbonization or towards a more sustainable city has to work also in other fields. But in our case, we were basically focused on these three areas of mobility, energy, and ICTs. But the model was quite, let's say, open and flexible to be also expanded to other areas, as for example, waste treatment, water in the city, natural-based solutions, and so on. And then connecting all this with the horizontal framework that you can see there, that is about the enabling factors in order to support the transformation of the city from the perspective of how to manage this transformation in terms of processes in order to engage the stakeholders, to activate participation, and to implement, well, throughout all these phases, the appropriate management structures in order to co-design, co-create when needed. Secondly, to evaluate all the different phases through a set of specific frameworks of indicators to support the design of the strategy for the city, the design of the actions, decision making, then assessment in order to fit the first phase again, and to continue working in this kind of loop through evaluation processes. And then the third one, the financing mechanisms and the business models that can support the implementation of all these solutions and all these technologies in order to connect with this focus on replicability, to connect in the highest, let's say, flexible manner, technologies and solutions with the non-technology side, the engagement of the stakeholders and the finance of the solutions regarding the different financing instruments existing in order to activate both public and private investments, and to connect these with the appropriate business models that facilitate the implementation of the solutions. We were working, as I said before, in three cities. In the case of the city of Valladolid, we implemented, we were working in one of the actions because we had more actions in the fields of mobility and ICT. But in the framework of buildings, we were working in order to transform an existing district that was made of 20 buildings, 400 dwellings, with an existing district heating network that was basically based on fossil fuels, natural gas, in order to transform this area into a nearly zero energy district, working on combining technologies for both reducing the demand of the buildings, and then secondly, in order to produce the required energy in a more efficient manner and with a high percentage of renewable energy sources. The structure of the property was totally private, so we had 400 dwelling owners in order to negotiate for the implementation, and this was a key factor, how to activate their participation and how to ensure that they were engaged and that they contributed somehow to the design of not only the technology part, but especially the non-technology part, so how the financing was, let's say, implemented, how the business model was implemented, implement it, and well, how they could participate in the whole process. The basic needs for this district were to transform the buildings into a nearly zero energy district, but especially focusing on the highest problems that they had. So they had very low comfort conditions, the consumption was really high, and they were consuming fossil fuels. So also the CO2 emissions were high in the district, and they had high energy bills without any kind of let's say control strategy per dwelling, what means that there were well, some dwellings that they had very well, cold conditions, and while others had well, an exceed of heat, and they had to even open the windows in winter because the heat was really high on these dwellings. So it was quite unbalanced, the situation, because of this lack of individual metering and controlling systems for the dwellings. So they all were paying the same, independently on the conditions that they had, and these energy bills were really high. This is the view of the district with the, here you can see the power plant that was well, basically where we had installed 3 big boilers based on gas, and also adapted to other kind of fuels, but still fossil fuels. And we had the 3 circuits that were feeding all these groups of 20 buildings, which are basically 19 blocks. With between 4 and 5 floors, and then the tower with 14 floors that was in this corner of the district. The heating distribution was also quite old, and therefore there were a lot of problems in the distribution system, and also in the substations in its building, because these were quite old systems, so the efficiency was really low or poor, and they had also high problems in terms of losses in the distribution. Even when there was snow in the street, they could see where the circuits were because the snow was melt in the paths of the circuits. So the main objectives for the renovation was to reduce the energy demand of the buildings as first condition, so to implement passive measures in order to both reduce the demand and to improve also the comfort conditions, because they had beyond the temperature conditions that were somehow poor, they had also problems related to humidity, to thermal breaches, and this was something that we had to work on. Also, there was something curious, and they had centralized the heating system, but not the domestic hot water. So we had the circuits in order to feed all the houses in terms of heating, but not in terms of domestic hot water. So each dwelling, they had different systems that were based on electricity, on butane, or different systems in order to produce the required domestic hot water. And as I said before, our objective was also to improve the efficiency in general and to reduce the CO2 emissions with a really high contribution in terms of renewable energy sources, with the involvement of the residents in the decision making at all the different levels, at the district level, at the building level, and also at the housing level. So improving their ability in order to manage the system, providing specific control mechanisms for them at housing level, and also at the district and building level, contributing to reducing the energy bill through improving the efficiency. So these were the actions that we implemented. We combined, as I said before, passive, active, renewable energy sources and information and communication technologies in a comprehensive and deep renovation of the district in order to achieve a complete strategy and intervention. Also thinking on how to combine technologies to keep control somehow the return of the investment and the payback period for the actions, because usually when you go for passive measures, the return of the investment is the periods are quite long, there is a need in order to think on how to combine the different technologies in order to keep these periods in let's say acceptable periods, especially for our case that was basically privately owned. So we had to work with them on defining the specific combination of technologies in order to achieve the conditions that they wanted, that was somehow to keep the same energy bill that they were paying before the intervention and repaying the required investment through the savings that they had through the combination of technologies. So the design of the different technologies and different solutions were aimed at this objective, along with the objective of improving the overall efficiency and improving the comfort conditions. So we insulated the buildings externally with this external thermal insulation in order to improve to reduce the demand, to improve the conditions of the walls, and also to improve in terms of reducing thermal breaches that were quite significant, especially in the floor slabs in the connection of these with the external wall. Also, we implemented a global energy management system covering all the different steps from the supply to the operation and maintenance in order to work on the different elements of the district heating network. So we implemented high efficiency biomass boilers in order to replace the existing boilers. We kept one of them, one of the gas boilers, in order to cover the peaks in the demand. But we, as main source, we implemented a biomass boiler of 1 megawatt along with a silo in order to provide, and this was newly built in order to provide the required biomass for in order to produce the heating that was required. Also, we implemented photovoltaic panels in the tower, in the facade, which is also, it was a quite significant action because this tower is quite significant in the city because it's in the main entrance from Madrid to Valladolid, or at least it was, because now we have new roads. But it's quite recognized, this building in the city, and we implemented this photovoltaic facade as an action in order to produce energy more sustainable, but also as a kind of signal of transformation of the district into a more sustainable district. This photovoltaic facade originally was planned in order to be connected or to connect the electricity production to the electricity system of the buildings. But according to the conditions that we had in the period in which it was implemented, we decided from the business model perspective that it was more, let's say, profitable connecting it to the district heating system through transforming the electricity into thermal energy and to contribute to the domestic hot water of the in this case of the tower, which reduces the energy bill of the whole district. This was because of the conditions at that moment, of the taxes that were to pay, and the different let's say financing analysis that we carried out. But now, considering that the situation has changed, they are thinking of exploiting the electricity that is produced, probably exporting this electricity to the network and then compensating the electricity that is consumed in the district. This is the action in order to renovate the district heating network that, as I said before, it was quite old and with different problems in terms of losses and also in terms of needs for repairment because there were leakages and some problems in the connections. And also we implemented the solution in order to centralize the domestic hot water production through implementing storage systems in the substations and through centralizing through specific pipes that were connected to the individual hot water systems in the buildings through the envelope and then through the connections to the different kitchens through the windows. And then we implemented also energy monitoring systems, as I said before, in order to keep controlled the energy consumption individually and also thermostatic valves in order to have somehow the ability to control the systems in order to keep them into comfort conditions and in order to operate them individually. Sorry. And then we implemented also intelligent measurement and monitoring systems in order to continuously optimize the whole system from the production to the individual operation, and also to implement the individual billing system, the distribution with these distribution units that we installed in the different radiators. In order to provide continuously information to the people managing the district and to the owners in terms of the energy that was produced, consumed, and so on. This is the comparison of the heating savings that we had, comparing the baseline with the reporting, where you can see a significant reduction, which was around 40%, thanks to the reduction of the demand. That was around a 50% of demand reduction, and also the implementation of the efficient systems in order to provide energy more efficiently. And this is the distribution of the different sources. And as I said before, we kept the natural gas production in order to cover these peaks, which contributes in 22% to the overall heating consumption, and then the rest is provided with biomass, which is up to 78% of contribution. And it was quite complex, let's say, the implementation of this project because of the conditions of the district, because we had all these 400 owners that were, let's say, grouped into two different management levels. They had the building community, where they had the ability in order to decide over the actions directly related to each building. So basically the interventions in the envelope. And then we have, let's say, macro community or big community that was representing the whole district. So where all the district was somehow represented, and that had the ability in order to decide over the district heating network. So we had two different levels of, let's say, decision, and we had to work with these two different levels. And while let's say, the owners were really in favor of the actions related to the district heating, they were more reluctant to the actions related to the passive measures and to acting over the envelope of the buildings. So, but the first was not possible in terms of the business model that we had designed without the second, without the action in order to reduce the demand. So we had to work with them, and we had to implement several actions in order to get them engaged, and to collaborate with them in order to decide over the best solution for the district. We implemented a lot of dissemination and communication activities in order to show the political commitment, also to provide all the information that was required in order to understand what was the project about, how the business model was working, how the actions were going to work, and which were the benefits related to the implementation of the actions. Also, we had to implement a strong, let's say, technical support campaign through implementing a consulting office in the district, through implementing several meetings, and also through the externalization of some, let's say, external support that we had to integrate in the decision-making process. So we had to hire or to contract an external technical advisor, and also an external lawyer, in order to support them on evaluating the conditions of the contracts, on evaluating the technical solutions. And these were people that were chosen by them. So the owners had the option and the possibility to select who they wanted to support them and who to integrate in the process. And along with them, we worked on these different meetings, periodic communications. We also created a follow-up commission with representatives beyond the communities that they had, representatives that they wanted to participate in the decision-making process, so that everyone that wanted to be part of the design process could be part of it. And this is how these are the costs related to the actions that were implemented. Here you can see the split between the passive intervention and the active intervention that were basically, in terms of the passive measures, the insulation of the facades, the roofs, also the installation of the building integrated photovoltaic. Even though this is a renewable energy source, it was also integrated from the perspective of the ventilated facade. So it was part of, let's say, somehow the package of the passive measures, even though it contributes to both levels. Also, the intervention through in the lighting system, only in the common areas, in order to replace the existing systems with LED based solutions in order to reduce the consumption. And then in terms of the active intervention, here you can see the split of the costs between the generation plant, the district heating network, the substations, the domestic hot water centralization, and also the devices that were installed in the dwellings. In total, the whole action was around 12,000 euros per dwelling, considering the two levels of actions, basically with the split that you can see there. This is the split of the district heating intervention, where most of the budget went into the heat exchanger, the domestic hot water storage, and the control system. And then you can see how the rest was distributed. And regarding how this was financed, the total intervention was this 4 million euros for all the actions. And we had to design, considering that the project was funded by the European Commission as a pilot project, we had to design how to combine this with other instruments in order to get and to create the best, let's say, financing environment for the owners, considering these conditions that I mentioned before. So the investment or the private investment required from their side had to be repaid with the savings, and this meant that we had to design how to combine the different sources of money that we had, and with the implementation of the business model that in this case was a combination of different, let's say, instruments. So it was highly funded by the European Commission, considering the conditions of the call in which the project was funded. So almost 56% was covered by the Commission. And also the municipality secured a grant to the owners that covered 50% of the intervention cost. A grant that was allocated in 2 different years in order to avoid gains on personal income taxation. And this was something, this was a condition that they established in order to avoid this extra gain to be sufficient in order to make them pay extra taxes. We had to divide this grant into 2 different, let's say, years in order to avoid this increment. And the way in which the business model was implemented, it was through, for the part that they had to cover with the private investment. I have to say that the public investment coming from the Commission, it went directly to the companies that in this case were Acciona and Veolia, working on implementing the Acciona, the passive measures, and also the photovoltaic facade, and in the case of Veolia, the district heating network. The public funds coming from the Commission were directly to them. This meant that it was not a grant to the owners, but it was a grant to the companies that directly reduced their, let's say, their bill to the owners in the amount that was coming from the Commission. And then we had this municipal grant that went to the owners, and this, yes, was considered as a direct grant to every family living in the district. And then for the 30% that was well, privately covered by them, by the owners, we implemented two specific schemes. One of them was a soft loan that was well, facilitated and, by Acciona, that worked with different banks along with the owners in order to find the best solution, also supporting in terms of providing guarantees and so on regarding the intervention, and supporting the owners on negotiating the best conditions for this soft loan that went to the macro community, so to the community representing the 400 dwelling owners. And then secondly, for the remaining part, Veolia implemented an energy performance contract, an EPC, based on well, paying with the savings the required investment as per the scheme that you can see here on the right side, and offering them different well, contracting options in order to implement this scheme. I guess you know the ESCO model, and in the case of Veolia, that was the partner working in the project, they offer well, a global energy solution that includes different, let's say, modules to cover only energy, so only providing energy services, or other modules that can provide services related to the operation and maintenance, to the repairment and renewal of the systems, and then also financing of the investment. In this case, they provided all the 4 modules, so they provided beyond the energy services, which is, let's say, the flexible part. They provided also all the other services with a full warranty. This means that if a boiler is broken or pipe needs a repairment, this is fully covered with the warranty during the duration of the contract. That in this case, it was 18 years. So for any kind of need of change of the system or whatever, it's fully covered with this full warranty that they are offering. And they also offered the financing of the investment through their internal financing providers that they have internally in the company, that provided the finance of this required investment. So this is the contract that they established with the owners, so the fixed term covering this warranty and this all this maintenance cost and the financing of the investment, and then the variable term, which is the energy that is consumed, and that is based on this real monitoring of the consumption. Which are the main advantages of this model? Well, the first one is that it is one single contact point. So the community of owners directly will have this direct contact with the ESCO company that provides all the services. So they don't need to go for the maintenance separately, to the finance separately, to the energy providers separately, because before the intervention they had to negotiate with the different providers every time that they were changing the contract or whatever. In this case, they have the full solution with a single point. The guarantee on the energy supply, and also the price guarantee that is negotiated at the beginning of the contract and is established how this price will evolve during the duration of the contract, and especially that the ESCO company assumes both the upfront costs, so there is no need for them to put any money at the beginning, and also the risks related to the operation of the system. So the better they operate the systems, the highest profit they will have, but this will not impact on the owners, because if they don't perform the systems as expected, well, they have penalties based on the conditions of the contract. So there is a sort of, let's say, guarantee on the best operation of the system provided by this company. And also in this particular case where they went for this full warranty, the guarantee of the equipment. So if in year 17 they need a change of the boiler, they will have the change of the boiler, and if the contract is over a year after, they will have a new boiler in order to be operated by them or by a new contract or whatever. And also the guaranteed savings in terms of and associated to these bonuses or penalties that are well defined in the contract. I don't know if I have a couple of minutes more. Well, just to show you another example very briefly, that is, it was implemented in the city of Nottingham, where we implemented also several actions, and one of them that I would like to highlight is the implementation of the first energy sprung pilot in the city of Nottingham, and in the United Kingdom. That was quite successful in the framework of the project, and now it's being replicated over the city and also over the country. It is a model that is basically defined in three terms. The first one is about the industrialization of all the solutions that are implemented, so that the intervention is really quick. So in 2-3 days, the main actions are implemented because all the elements come prefabricated from the industry. So all the envelope elements with the windows installed, with everything, and then in some days, with the whole let's say envelope is renovated. Then the second is that in this particular case, they implemented a way of contracting for performance instead of contracting for price or for the best, let's say, the best solution in terms of I don't know, price quality or any other indicator. In this case, the condition was contracting for performance. So for those companies applying to the tender process that was launched by the municipality, because this I should have said this at the beginning, but these houses are municipality owned, so they are public. They launched a tendering process where they established several contracting conditions in terms of the performance, the expected performance after the intervention. So the definition in terms of technologies, in terms of everything was open for those applying to the tender, so they could select the technologies as they wanted. There was a fixed price, so the price was closed, and there was no expectation on the offers in order to reduce the price, but the condition was to offer the best performing solution in order to achieve a zero energy consumption in terms of fossil fuels in the district, so a full renewable energy-based housing, and several conditions in terms also of the comfort conditions or parameters to be met during the operation of the buildings. And this was set in the tendering process and also in the contract, so they had some sort of let's say penalties in case these conditions were not met during the operation of the buildings. Obviously, according to several parameters and several ways in order to monitor the operation. But this was a condition that was established between the municipality and the companies providing the solution for this renovation. And then the third one was the implementation of a scheme based on revolving funds by the municipal housing company that were the owners of the buildings, where the internal rate of return pays or repays the investment of this account that they have for this sort of interventions. So they act somehow as a kind of ESCO company, with the difference that they are not, as being a municipal housing company, they are not expecting for let's say an industry profit or an industry benefit, but the savings have to pay or repay the investment that comes from this account that they have in order to implement this sort of interventions. So they implemented this action that was quite successful, and as I said before, now they have granted specific instruments in order to be replicated throughout the city and also throughout the country. And actually, they have created let's say a framework platform that is called Energy Sprung UK. In order to roll out the model and to replicate this solution over other houses in different cities, in order to contribute to the decarbonization objectives and the climate neutrality of the cities. This was also combined with the implementation of a low temperature district heating that was implemented in some other buildings of the district, because we had these buildings, but also with some other high-rise buildings that were connected to a low temperature district heating. that in this case was fully public funded with both the Commission funds and also the municipal funds in order to connect this low temperature pipe to the return temperature of an existing district heating network in the city. And they connected with this low temperature district heating, these high-rise buildings, but also these buildings and these houses that were renovated with this model. So these are just some examples of cases that have been implemented. And in the project also we developed a catalog of financing instruments, understanding that, we have to also connect the different solutions and technologies and approaches with different sources of instruments to finance and also business models, considering different scenarios of reduction of public funds, especially coming from the Commission, and highest contribution of private funds through models, as for example, these EPCs, or for example, now we are working in the implementation of advanced EPCs for deployment of positive energy districts, where beyond, let's say, improving the efficiency of the buildings, you have some assets that you can monetize, which are, for example, the energy flexibility or the surplus of energy for districts that are producing more energy than they are consumed. And this is quite interesting in terms of implementing these advanced models and schemes in order to contribute to rolling them out and replicating them in other areas. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope it was clear, and in case you have any question or whatever, I will stay here, and also you can. I will now type my contact details in the chat, and also send you the information about Prospect Plus in case you want to participate. I really invite you to do so because it's quite interesting. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Miguel Angel, and it seems that your voice could get to the end. So very good news. So we are a bit late, but maybe if there is one question, we can take it. Okay, if not, then we can move to the last speaker, last slot of the day, who will be held by Talia Brun-Marsen from CINEA, from the Executive Agency of the European Commission. And thanks for coming, and she will talk about the Enercom facility. So please, Talia, the floor is yours. Okay, we see the presentation.
Hi. Okay, perfect. Can you see it correctly? Yes?
Yes, in full screen.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. As Ricardo mentioned, I work for the Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency of the Commission, and I'm today going to present to you the European Energy Communities Facility. I'm very glad to be presenting it after the excellent presentation by Mariangela on the city facility, because that way you have kind of managed to visualize already how a cascade funding instrument works. And basically what I'm going to be presenting to you today is quite similar. You see there on the slide that there is like a topic reference, a life clean energy transition topic reference. And that's because what I'm going to be presenting today is not yet an initiative. So there was a call earlier this year, and now we have received a number of proposals which are under assessment, and this facility will be in place at some point in 2024. So it's still in the making, let's say, but I would like you to, I'm going to be presenting its main elements, and I would like you to keep it in your radar, because we want to support the early phases of projects, particularly on community heating. So it's quite it fits very well kind of the outcomes of ConnectHeat as well. So let me just go through its main elements. I'm going to be very brief. So typically I present why energy communities are supported by the Commission, but I think that here I'm speaking to the converted, so I will not go through that. But as you know, we have two definitions of energy communities in legislation. One is renewable energy communities, and the other one is citizen energy communities. And both of them are in different directives and have been transposed by most member states. There's still some that are still working on it, but it's more or less coming now after a few years of work. But also those directives kind of required member states to put together enabling frameworks for energy communities to basically allow communities to compete on an equal footing with other actors in the energy system. And there we see really enormous differences in terms of the maturity of those enabling frameworks. And that leads us to a situation where a lot of kind of community energy ideas stay at the kitchen table, because from the kitchen table, from like when you have a group of motivated volunteers discussing a potential project, for that to become kind of a project development, for that to reach project development, there needs to be a bit of support at the beginning. So there are spaces in which those early volunteers, early members find the support necessary to go into the early stages of project development. And there are places in which they can raise enough funds to pay for pre-feasibility studies, etc. And there are places where it's very difficult to move from that very early phase. So that's why, to address that need, we thought that we need an instrument to support the early phase of community energy project development. So there's that, and there's also another part of the needs that we want the facility to address, which is that probably you're familiar with the outcomes of the Energy Communities Repository and the Rural Energy Communities Advisory Hub. These are two initiatives that have been delivering technical support to energy communities, but also doing an enormous job in terms of like collecting materials for energy communities and also assessing the context in the different member states. And they are coming to an end early in January 2024. Okay. So we needed an initiative that somehow takes the relay of those and carries forward that kind of that repository work. So basically, the Energy Communities Facility will be a structure to make the success of community projects less dependent on the income level of the different communities and also on the availability of support at the local level. And it will give continuity to the outputs of those two initiatives I mentioned. And we also hope them to basically organize some form of peer-to-peer exchanges and best practice sharing. So the facility will do so by concentrating on that early phase, which means that we will support communities develop their business plans, and then we will stop there. So we will give them a small grant, a lump sum grant, like the city facility does, to get to a very solid business plan, and then they will need to approach financing institutions, technical providers, etc. But our support will stop there. So there will be two levels of support. The first one will be a pre-screening to just check the feasibility of a project idea, and that will be carried out by a network of dedicated experts that are able to understand the different context in which energy communities are emerging. So it's not the same to develop an energy community in a country where there's already a lot of initiatives as to develop it in a context where there's very few examples. So they will take care of that contextual analysis. And then once an idea is considered feasible, those able to access a lump sum grant, and that lump sum grant may be between between 1 and 60,000 euros. We are still assessing the proposal, so I cannot tell you, the level of those lump sums that the different consortia or the winning consortia will have, but it will be basically an amount that is able to support that business plan development. And this is a 10 million initiative. So overall, that one consortia that wins this topic or wins the grant for this topic will receive 10 million. And they are asked to devote at least 70% to this direct support to energy communities. So we hope that they support more than 100 communities and that it reaches really an important number of renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities. Maybe it's relevant also to say in this forum that the initiative will be open to to applicants that maybe have not yet a renewable energy community, but plan to develop one that meets one of the two definitions. So there will be some space, for instance, for local authorities perhaps to apply if they can show the commitment to then create a community that meets the definitions. Along with that kind of support, direct support, there will be a help desk that gives ad hoc advice to applicants, a bit like what you have heard from the city facility that promotes the initiative, where necessary that trains local actors, but also that helps those winning communities, those that receive the direct support, the lump sums, to contract the expertise necessary to develop these business plans. And of course, there will be some quality control and to make sure that those business plans really provide a good ground to then move forward. So that's that. And along with that, so help desk, direct support, there will be some complementary activities. I've spoken about most of the elements there, but it's important perhaps to also mention that we hope this initiative to remain complementary to existing support systems in the different member states. So we hope that they manage to map the different one-stop shops and also support mechanisms, and that they complement those member states' instruments to the extent possible. So that's that. Here you have kind of the different elements of the facility that we hope to see. So a help desk that direct support those lump sums, and then that complementary work to support a bit more the kind of the monitoring, best practice sharing, the more analytical work, the expansion of the repository and the RECA, and also the kind of the monitoring of the outcomes of the facility itself. Now, what is relevant maybe for you is also to know the timeline. So as I said, the evaluation of this grant is ongoing. We expect the facility to be in place in Q3 2024, and we hope that Winning Consortium to be able to launch the first calls around the beginning of 2025. So maybe that's useful for you to know, and that's all I have to say today, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thanks a lot. I think it's very interesting, and also that the timing is, I think, compatible, let's say, with our needs. We really saw that this, let's say, initial small sum for checking the feasibility, also from a financial point of view of an energy community, could really act as a barrier. So it's very, it could be really a service that can overcome these initial obstacles. Thanks again. Is there any question? We have some time. If not, maybe I have just one curiosity, but I'm not sure whether I lost something from your speech, let's say. So at the beginning, you were saying also that you wanted to put kind of a special focus on the heating communities. How is that foreseen? Will you have a kind of a specific separate budget, or it's just a question of from a, let's say, communication point of view, you will try to also to spread the word about heating?
We hope so. I cannot answer that because it will depend a little bit on the offer that we get. But the call is open to different types of technologies, and we know that for very simple kind of energy community projects, for instance, for solar, in some countries, there's already a lot of national support that is in place. So in those places, I mean, we would expect the facility to focus on harder to develop projects, and heating communities is one of those areas. So we would expect that in some areas, heating would be kind of a natural direction to go towards. But as I said, the offers are still under development, so I cannot be very precise on this. Yeah.
Okay, but that's an interesting signal, at least, because sometimes we have the impression that this kind of yeah, communities are completely forgotten, let's say, while as you said, the potential, especially in some of the countries, is quite large. Okay, is there any other question? If there are no other questions, I don't know if Miguel Angel, you're still there. May I ask you a question about your presentation now that we have time? Because
yes,
you, so you talk about especially the technical part, let's say, and also the financing model you used in your example, and also in the example in the UK. But at the beginning of your presentation, you were saying also that when you involve these residential areas, you also tried to, let's say, to engage the users. I was wondering whether this was just a question of, let's say, convincing them to connect to district heating, or there was a more active role of the users if they somehow participated in the design of the project, and if they did, how they did it. So, because of course since we are developing community heating project, we are very interested in this, let's say, citizen-led or user-led approach. So any idea on that, any model on that would be really welcome. So I was wondering whether this was the case, or it was just let's say, a top-down district heating project.
Well, in this case, they already had the district heating system connected to the 400 dwellings. So they already had somehow, let's say, this concept of sharing the energy production system and being connected to that. So from that side, it was not necessary to convince them about the benefits of district heating, but it was necessary to convince them about the, let's say, the deep renovation that was required in order to provide them the energy more efficiently and to keep the energy bill reduced. So we had to work with them in order to engage them throughout the process. We had different stages, and it was a quite complex process, because at the beginning we thought that perhaps just with information campaigns it was necessary, also it was sufficient. But then we realized that information was not sufficient, and we needed to really engage them in the process, because we had like a first, let's say, votation process in which they voted for the project as we offered them from the, let's say, from the way in which we had to propose the project for the call, and the way in which the project was funded. And then we went there with a project that we thought it had the best conditions for them. And then they voted and they said no, because they hadn't been part of the design process. And it was just because of that, because the solution was really good, and from the financial and technical perspective, it was really good. But they said no because they hadn't been part of it. So we had to restart the process again, working with them, engaging them, not just informing, but listening the other needs that they had, and trying to integrate somehow these needs into the design. And then as an outcome of this, we came out with a proposal and a solution that was part of their process, and it had considered all their needs. And then they voted and they said yes to the project. But it was quite long, and we had to somehow change our process of approaching them in the sense of actually engaging and not just informing. We have other experiences also in the city of Valladolid. We have been working in other sort of districts, also with existing district heating networks, and we faced somehow the same problems. So we had to engage the people on designing every element of the project. And also we tried with districts without an existing district heating network in order to implement a new one. And finally, it was impossible because we couldn't change somehow their mindset in order to think of this, let's say, this communal system, and sharing the system in order to produce the energy they need with privately owned houses. With public owned, it's totally different, but with private owners, because they somehow, at least in Spain and with the districts we've been working with, they feel like they are losing, let's say, the capacity of managing individually what they have, and this change of mindset from the individual system to a district heating solution or communal solution or whatever is quite difficult in these cases. I guess that we need more examples in order to somehow make them change in their mindset and this cultural thing. I know in northern countries it's totally different because the approach is somehow the contrary. So they are used to having these shared systems, and it's somehow the approach is totally different on how to invest, how to work with these systems, and how to improve them in order to get new connections or whatever.
Okay, thanks. I think so. It was really a participatory, a shared decision on the project, which I think is very rare and very interesting. And sorry for pushing you about that, but I think that's a very interesting topic. Could you give just one practical examples of a decision which was somehow influenced by the user comments, let's say, because you said at the beginning that maybe they were not influencing just the technical aspect, but also other aspects of the development of the project, maybe related to the buildings or to the district. I don't know.
Yeah, there were several changes, but perhaps three more, let's say, to be highlighted. One was that we were offering at the beginning changing their windows as a part of the solution, and this was considered as part of the budget for the project. We were not considering changing the distribution system because we thought at the beginning it was in better conditions than we realized later that it was. And then the third one, it was that the contract with the ESCO company was planned to be shorter, so we were thinking of 10 years, but with a small increase of the energy bill per month, and it was really small, so it was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 euros, no more. But when we proposed this, they said first they didn't want the windows because most of them had already changed their windows. They didn't want to go through the process again, even though there were some for those, it was beneficial, but the general feeling was that they didn't want this action. The second was that the changing the distribution system was mandatory, so we had to go for changing the distribution system. So the budget that was thought for the windows, it went to the distribution system. And then we had to, and there was a need to renegotiate the contract in order to enlarge it to be able to absorb the investment with the savings in order to keep the energy bill constant over the time, so that there was not an increase of the energy bill. So these were like the three conditions that they said. Then there were others, for example, very small things, painting the ground floors, also deciding about the colors of the elements of the envelope. So really small things, but in terms of the biggest changes, these three: windows, distribution system, and the keeping the energy bills on the same amount. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Again, I don't know if there are any other questions from the partners. Okay, if not, maybe we can wrap up. Once again, thanks to all speakers for coming and for sharing your views and your experience, let's say. We will have, as Clemence was saying at the beginning, we will have a survey about this Train the Trainer session. I don't know, Marta and Clemence, if you will already post it in the chat, or maybe you will send an email afterwards.
Yes,
okay.
I will share right now the screen with the QR code that you can scan. So as always, I invite you to do it right now, but I will also send the link in the chat so that it's there.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, I'm about to share the screen. Sorry.
Yes.
It's a bit
Maybe
slow.
just, no, don't worry. In the meanwhile, I can just remind you all that we will have the recording and the presentation uploaded in the Train the Trainer section, let's say, of our ConnectHeat website. Okay, so now you have the QR code. So you will have all the material and both the recording and the presentation on our ConnectHeat website. And very important, of course, as was said at the beginning by Clemence, on 21st of December, we will have our TT, it's 3, because we had to postpone it, let's say. So once again, from 9 to 12. So please remember to participate. You should have all received the link and the invitation for the Teams meeting. If you didn't, of course, please ask Fedarene and they will send it to you. Okay, if there are no other issues, I just want to thank you all again. I wish you a nice day and a nice week. And of course, thanks again to Fedarene for the organization of the session.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ricardo.
Bye.
Thanks for
Ciao,
the
ciao.
Bye. Thank
See you
you.
soon. See you
Bye.
next week.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
И как първо каза, че
Okay, Ricardo. No.